Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles. And before we crack on with the play-by-play commentary on today's battle, I felt it was worth taking a couple of minutes at the start of this video just to make a few comments about the news that came out over the weekend in World of Warships, beginning with the news of the American battleship line split at Tier 7 after the USS Colorado. We're getting a new Tier 8, Tier 9 and Tier 10 American battleship, very similar to the Colorado, big, very, very slow, not particularly well armoured, but with lots and lots of big guns. And also a Tier 7 premium, the USS Florida, which is basically what the USS North Carolina would have been if she'd had to abide by the treaty limitations. So a Tier 7 North Carolina with 14-inch guns. And I'm sure she'll be fine, but it's the Tier 8, 9 and 10 tech tree ships, the Kansas, Minnesota and Vermont, that are raising a few eyebrows because, yes, they have lots of firepower, but they're very big, they're very, very slow, and they don't have a lot of armour. None of which would be particularly bad because the New Mexico and the Colorado have their fans, but then after the weekend, Wargaming made another announcement about another new Tier 9 premium ship that's coming to the game, or more accurately coming back to the game, except at Tier 9 rather than Tier 8 where it was the last time we saw her. Yes, the Kitakami, which is essentially a Tier 4 Japanese Kuma-class light cruiser, lengthened with 40 torpedo tubes. Yep, you heard that right, 40 torpedo tubes. Imagine a division of 3 of these things flooding a flank with 120 torpedoes at a time. Furthermore, imagine, if you will, what it might be like to be in a very big, very slow, thinly armoured American battleship. With these things coming back into the game. I can't help but feel that the timing of those two announcements was unintentionally hilarious. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Meanwhile, back to today's battle. This is Hedonius 2552 in the British Tier 7 destroyer HMS Jervis. He's just managed to clap eyes on his opposite number over there in the USS Mayhan. And it's quite surprising that the enemy destroyers aren't the ones rushing forward to get themselves killed in the first minute of the battle, and in fact it's the bottom tier cruisers like the USS Omaha over there. Not quite sure what his plan was. If it was to be the first one killed, it looks like he's doing a pretty good job. On the other hand, if it was to get into the cap circle and into cover behind the island there, he's doing a miserable job of it. He's actually managed to stop and turn away just before he crossed into the cap circle. Oh well. Is he going to be the first one dead? He's managed to go undetected. Although I think more through luck than judgment. But then again, at least he did have the sense to stop shooting, so he has managed to go undetected. So... oh, no, he's been spotted again. Oh, God. Tier 5 cruisers. Speaking of which, enemy Königsberg and the smokescreen. And the Königsberg doesn't come with a smokescreen generator, so that smokescreen almost certainly houses an enemy destroyer. Oh! And in shock news, the Omaha is not the first one killed. A friendly Akatsuki has managed to suffer the indignity of dying to the Bliskovich's torpedoes. Now that's got to be embarrassing. And there he is. Shots out from the Jervis, and that first salvo has disabled one of his torpedo launchers and knocked out his engine. Now I don't know if the Bliskovicha is running with a last stand skill because he's immediately used the damage control. However, the third salvo knocks out his engine again. You can see the smoke and flames coming from his funnel. If he does have last stand, of course that's only going to slow him down. Did he just fire armour piercing? Oh, and there's a torpedo hit, presumably on the Königsberg, because that's who they were aimed at, but the Bliskovicha just fired armour piercing with its 120mm guns. Struggling to think of a good reason why. I mean, if you're armed with 113mm guns or lower, and, you know, you're not Japanese and get special rules, then yeah, armour piercing shells against same tier destroyers make sense, and it looks like he does not have the last stand skill because he's basically come to a halt. And why aren't his guns pointing in this direction? How can you not know that there's a Jervis over here? I mean, you just disabled your engines twice. Oh, he's managed to get the turrets turned around, and he's still firing armour piercing. All Hedonius needs to do now is angle away, a lot more than that, and he doesn't, and he does take a fair bit of damage. But if the Bliskovicha is continuing to fire AP, all you have to do is angle away, and most of those shots are going to bounce and do no damage. So Hedonius, you did take a lot of unnecessary damage there that you didn't need to. If you just angled either away from or towards the Bliskovicha a bit more, most of those shots would have bounced. Now, the Bliskovich is outside a line of fire, but you did manage to set a fire with your last shot, and we know he's already used his damage control, so that's your first kill. Cost you a lot of health that you didn't need to lose in the process, however. Now then, you're about to get spotted, and there it is by the enemy Leander. So, smokescreen. The Leander may be a tier lower, but he's a very dangerous opponent, and he was clearly looking for you. He took a couple of hits there from his 152mm AP. And I do like what you're doing here. You'll note that he's not sticking around inside the smokescreen, because the Leander is clearly gunning for him, and the Leander has hydro. And he's charging that smokescreen down. So I'd prefer to see you putting a bit more direct distance between that smokescreen and where the Leander is, because he's clearly closing in. I'd also be very surprised if any of those torpedoes hit him, because, well, he knows he's chasing a destroyer on the far side of a smokescreen, so he should be running hydro. And yet, well, maybe he took one on the nose, and you have been spotted. He clearly wasn't expecting you to be out here, however. You've managed to set a fire. Has he damage controlled? No, he hasn't. If you can survive the next couple of seconds, you've got the Leander without taking any further shots, because he has used his damage control. Presumably when you hit him with the torpedo, he damage controlled a single flood. Now he has done a lot of damage to you, but he can no longer shoot because he's managed to put an island between you and him. And sure enough, the fire takes care of the Leander as well. Unfortunately, you have lost a lot of health, and I want to see you use your damage control. There it is, good. And yeah, the smokescreen isn't a terrible idea under the circumstances either. That Königsberg is very upset with you. He definitely took one of your torpedoes. Now, I also like the fact that you know what your spotting range is here. And I'm not talking about your surface detection range, because you are in direct line of sight of the Gneisser now while you're shooting at that Königsberg, but you clearly knew, or perhaps you were just lucky, that the Gneisser now was outside of your shooting range and wouldn't see you once you started shooting. So you were completely in the clear to continue to shoot at the Königsberg, but oh, this is really dangerous. He's in the middle of open water, and he's blind firing you with remarkable accuracy. I mean, you did get hit there. You did at least have the sense to stop shooting as soon as your smokescreen was due to expire. Torpedoes in the water. These are the moments when you really need to take your finger off the trigger, keep them spotted, and let your teammates deal with them for you. Or hope that your teammates deal with them for you. Because he's turned, he's German, he has hydro, none of those torpedoes are going to hit. He is ensuring that he continues to remain spotted, however, and so your teammate in the Nagato was only too happy to finish him off. And that's taken a lot of pressure off you. The situation overall, however, could be a lot better. Both teams have lost 4 ships, but the enemy team have 2 of the 3 caps, and oh, you've just lost another ship, so the enemy team are now a kill up. They have nearly double the amount of points, and they're in the process of flipping the 3rd cap as well. Oh, and of course, I mean, it's fairly obvious, but I'll point it out anyway, you only have 355 health left, so you absolutely, definitely don't want to get spotted again for the remainder of this match. Over in that direction, we've got what looks disturbingly like a fair fight breaking out between the friendly Nagato and New Mexico and the enemy Gneisser now in New Mexico. And there is something that you can at least do to help out there. The Gneisser now, of course, is closing in to fire off his torpedoes. Yep, there they are. And the New Mexico has fallen for it. Adonius slows down, pops his smoke, and starts blasting away at the Gneisser now with high explosive. Now, you shouldn't expect these shots to do any direct damage. Most of them are going to shatter, but they can still set fires, and hopefully force the Gneisser now to trigger his damage control. They've taken care of the New Mexico. The Gneisser now is swinging around away from the Nagato's 16-inch guns, ensuring that all of his 15-inch guns are not going to be able to fire. He is, of course, trying to get the torpedoes away from the other side, and under the circumstances you might think, well, that's a fairly decent trade, and he does actually manage to hit the Nagato with some of those torpedoes, but he could have taken the Nagato out as well if he'd gone for the ram instead of swinging around to get the torpedoes away, exposing broadside and guaranteeing that he was going to die. But, well, Gneisenauers are going to be Gneisenauers. It's just what they do. They're all frustrated destroyer captains. Now, the New Mexico has a massive health advantage over the Nagato, although he definitely doesn't have the firepower advantage. And if it was just him versus the Nagato, you'd expect that guy to stand and fight because he's got a better than even chance of winning. But I hope at least that he's realised that there is also an enemy destroyer over here, because otherwise his decision to turn tail and run away doesn't make an awful lot of sense. Meanwhile, the team have managed to grab a cap circle at the other end of the map, which is good, but they're going to need to start doing a damn sight better than that if they're going to have any chance of winning this battle. Hedonius closing in on the New Mexico. The Nagato also chasing down the New Mexico, and of course both of these ships are way faster than the American Tier 6 battleship. And if that New Mexico is paying attention, and I suspect he probably is, and he was in any doubt as to whether or not he was being pursued by a destroyer, he must know now, because the cap circle that he's in is contested. The only thing he can see is the Nagato, and the Nagato is not in the cap circle. So, sure enough, the New Mexico is hauling ass. Well, New Mexicos don't haul ass anywhere. He's having a brisk walk away from the perceived threat, which of course is great news for Hedonius, because he's now able to cap uncontested. A couple of things happen here, some of which I like, some of which I don't, most of which are entirely understandable. The New Mexico's turning, so those torpedoes are going to miss. The Nagato catches him in the turn with his 16-inch shells, and he's firing on a piercing, but the New Mexico kind of gets away with it. Because the New Mexico has turned, Hedonius' torpedoes have whiffed, so he's popped the smoke and he's trying to get some fires set with his 120mm shells, which are doing very, very little direct damage, because even with IFHE, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't have it, 120mm shells aren't going to do a lot of damage to a battleship, even if they do hit the superstructure. Now what I want to see Hedonius do here is get out of this smoke screen. And to his credit, even though I think that smoke screen was pretty much a waste, he does realise that he's not going to take that New Mexico down by himself unless he gets extremely lucky or the New Mexico does something extremely stupid. He's going to have to rely on the firepower of the Nagato. And that means he can't sit inside the smoke screen. He has to spot the New Mexico for the Nagato. And that's what he's doing. So this is good. I like to see this. The question is, how's that New Mexico going to react? He's sneaking in behind that island over there, and he was angled away from the Nagato. If the New Mexico continues to fall back to regroup with his teammates, it'll be fine. But on the other hand, if he turns in to fight, Hedonius is going to get spotted. And he is turning in to fight. And he is inside surface detection range. The New Mexico can't see him, of course, because there's an island in the way. But the island isn't going to be blocking line of sight for much longer if the New Mexico continues to push forward, and he is. And here's where Hedonius makes a decision that I don't entirely agree with, and I'll explain why. He could, even though he's inside surface detection range, have kept out of line of sight of the New Mexico by just continuing on this course, but he doesn't. He stops, he smokes up. He could have gotten the torpedoes away anyway, but the fact that he's now shooting, presumably in an effort to start an early fire and force the damage control on the New Mexico, means that he's had to use the smoke screen. And that is telling the New Mexico that there are torpedoes on the way. The New Mexico is a little bit late to take the hint, however. So I'm not a great fan of this idea. It was a completely unnecessary smoke, and it nearly cost him the kill on the New Mexico by alerting him to the fact that there were torpedoes on the way. But, well, it did work. The New Mexico was very slow to react to the threat. But popping the smoke there and using the guns was unnecessary. The guns did nothing, other than alert the New Mexico to the fact that he was about to get torpedoed. Hedonius didn't even need to pop the smoke to stay inside the cap circle, because he'd already flipped it, with the assistance of the Nagato. So I'm going to say that was an unnecessary and potentially dangerous use of smoke. But, well, it worked. So I can't really be too critical. So, the enemy team are down to 2 ships, although they are more than 100 points ahead, and they're starting to flip a second cap. Both teams currently hold 2, so the current rate of points game is even for both teams, and with the enemy team in the lead, that's good for the enemy team, it's not good for Hedonius' team. And of course, with the enemy team in the process of flipping alpha, that's going to get worse before it gets better. There's a friendly Nürnberg down to the southwest who's on low health. The Nagato is on low health, and Hedonius still only has 355 health remaining. The enemy team have a Warspite and another New Mexico, and we have no idea where either of them are. Now, when you don't know where the two enemy battleships are, and you're in a destroyer that only has 355 health, oh, there's the Warspite, which is not good news for the Nürnberg, because he's getting shot at. And there's the New Mexico. You really need to be careful when approaching the corners of islands, because you just don't know what might be around the other side of it. So I liked the fact that Hedonius was taking a wide berth around the islands here, and also running his hydro, just in case that New Mexico was on the far side of this island over here on his left. So that was good to see, because you don't want to go blundering around a corner within secondary gun battery range of a battleship that you don't expect to be there when you only have 355 health left. Now, he has been forced to use this smoke again because he was within spot and range of the enemy New Mexico. So, unfortunate, but largely unavoidable, because he didn't actually see the New Mexico and he didn't know where he was until he saw him, until it was too late to do anything about being spotted. So, he doesn't have an awful lot of smokes left. This was his last one. This is why I don't like to see destroyers using smoke screens that they don't have to. He's managed to set a double fire on the New Mexico. He's not using his damage control, but I don't think it's really going to make any difference, because that is going to be another kill. And there's the high caliber award, and that just leaves the enemy Warspite, who has managed to sink the Nürnberg. But I think the Nürnberg managed to get a torpedo or two into him. And yes, he did. Now, Hedonius, you're not going to shoot at the Warspite, are you? I like that you're capping. I like that you're keeping the Warspite spotted for the Nagato. And the Nagato has bigger guns than the Warspite. So don't throw it all now by getting yourself spotted by shooting. I'm not expecting him to. I mean, I don't agree with all of the decisions that he's made, but he's played pretty sensibly. I'm not expecting him to start shooting at the Warspite. Or at least I'm expecting him to start shooting at the Warspite after the Warspite has fired all of its guns. Or when it's on very, very low health like this, and maybe he can get a fire set. Because you do not have a smokescreen. The Warspite knows there's a destroyer here. It's popping its spotter plane. Wait for it, wait for it. Wait for it. Wait for it to fire. Because it's going to be reloaded. Oh, he's taking a risk here. Because the Warspite was just about to fire. But once again, he gets away with it. Like I said, I don't agree with every decision that Hedonius made during the course of that battle. And also, don't forget, it's very easy for me to sit here watching a replay, throwing criticism around. It's a lot more difficult when you're actually in the stress of the moment and taking part in the battle itself. And he certainly didn't make any bad decisions, just a couple of decisions that cost him unnecessary charges of his smoke generator. He could have angled better against the Bliskovica once he realised the Bliska was firing AP at him, and that did cost him a lot of damage. But again, decisions made in the heat of battle, as long as they don't get you killed, they're excusable. And it was particularly good to see the teamwork on display between Hedonius and the captain of the Nagato there, who carried the game for their team. Shout out as well, of course, to the Nürnberg. It's not often you see a mid-tier cruiser surviving right up until the end of the battle, so well done to him too. And since we're in the mood for showering praise around, a big shout out as well to the team's two Tier 5 cruisers, the Montecacholi, or however the hell you pronounce it, and the Marblehead, who may have died, but they both managed to score more than 1,000 base experience, in stark contrast to the enemy Omaha, who may have narrowly avoided the honour of being the first ship to die, but probably wishes he had, as he came away from that battle with only 234 experience. So well done to those two guys for proving that just because you're in a bottom tier cruiser, and it is rough being in a Tier 5 cruiser in a Tier 7 game, you can still make a difference. And that is very much it for today. Hedonius, congratulations on the result. You definitely earned it. Thank you very much for sending that one in. Everyone else, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope maybe you learned something from it. And as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.